me hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing in. Hold tight, chemicals collide. Hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Dripping lights paint the skies, all because of you. Dripping lights paint the skies, only you can make me move. You can make me move.
Hi, my name is Dale. I want to welcome you to Observer of Anomalous Objects. I want to apologize to everyone. Unfortunately, the first link we used, for some reason, StreamYard messed up. And so hopefully you guys will be able to make the transition. I sent a notification on X. If anybody wants to go ahead and share that, I'd appreciate it so that everybody knows how to be able to watch the show live. I appreciate it if you do that as well. I'm really excited. We're going to have, let me tell you something. One special lady is going to be coming up, and her name is Yvonne Smith. Yvonne Smith is a pioneering hypnotherapist of one of the most respected voices in the study of UFO experiencers. With over 30 years of clinical experience, she has worked with hundreds of individuals reporting close encounters, helping them process deeply traumatic and often life-altering events. As the founder of the Close Encounter Resource Organization, or as it's known otherwise, CERO, she created a global support network for those navigating these mysterious experiences. Mentored by legends like Budd Hopkins and Dr. John Mack, Yvonne brings both compassion and rigor to one of the most controversial frontiers of human consciousness. And so, without any further ado, let me go ahead and bring the one and only Yvonne Smith up on the stage. So I want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here, Yvonne. I'm sorry for the headache of it echoing, but it's something about you and me when we get together. It's like somebody doesn't want us to talk, doesn't want this podcast.
I'm so used to having just interruptions on shows. It's been happening since I've been in the field, and I've been in the field now 35 years. We used to do a lot of filming in my home back in the 90s when we had all those shows, sightings and encounters, and the camera equipment would fail. I mean, the batteries would drain because I would have several serial members talking about their experiences. So Dale, don't worry about it. I'm sorry this happened, but it just, I'm so used to the interference now, you know, but we're here.
Part of living in the paranormal world, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I want to basically speak to everyone that's watching and let you know that this is a planned podcast. This isn't like a lot of my podcasts where we just try to find when they're available or when I'm available. But this one was planned. We just had 3 incredible experiencer podcasts, and I'm sure most of you have seen those. You know, we had Deborah Jordan Cobble on, and that's Kathy Davis from Budd Hopkins' book, Intruders. In fact, he says right in the book that she is the main character. And so, in fact, one of her clips on TikTok had like over 380,000 views. So I was like blown away. I mean, it really, really affected a lot of people, and they shared it and it kind of went viral. The second experiencer podcast I had, though, that was with Jason Sands. And let me tell you something, that was an intense podcast because one of the things that Jason saw was an alien murdered right before his very eyes. You know, and so you can only imagine how traumatic that was. In fact, the one thing that really got to me from that podcast was when Jason said that the alien, he knew he was going to die, and he was telepathically talking to him. And he told Jason that he felt sorry for us, because we really don't understand what life's all about. And here he's about to die, but he feels sorry for us. And then, of course, the last one I did, was Sev Tak. And she really, I'm telling you, wow, you want to talk about an encourager. You want to talk about someone that talks about going from fear to love, from being discouraged to being encouraged. She was just profound. And really, it was a good balance of the reality of experiencers. They're not all the same, are they, Yvonne?
Absolutely not. But the experiences are very similar. I mean, there's a similar thread that goes through all of them. I've done hundreds and hundreds of hypnosis sessions, but yet, because we don't have all the answers, I always remind myself I have to keep my mind open if I hear something I've never heard before, kind of place it on the back burner until I hear it again. And that's what's happened over the years. And when I hear it over and over from people that do not know each other, I put it in my lecture series because I know that millions of people are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, and some of them don't even know it. That's the scary part, Let me just ask the audience once again, because we had to restart this podcast because Yvonne and I seem to bring about some kind of psychic connection or phenomenon connection. It went all the way from the initial intro messed up, and it just kept after that. So I had no choice but to shut it down. So if you'll go ahead and just maybe repost it on X, maybe repost it on Facebook, and get the word out so people know how to get here so that they will not miss out on this really, really great podcast. But like I was saying, the reason I brought Yvonne in is because we just had these three experiencers on, and I thought, you know what? That's not enough. It's not enough to tell the story. It's not enough to let experiencers get up and talk. And for full transparency, I'm an experiencer, and I'm a little biased when it comes to Yvonne because she's my therapist too. We've had about 5 sessions, so I want to be upfront about that. But I just thought, you know what? We've got to take the next step and not just talk about experiencers, but kind of channel experiencers and help them find help. Because I think it's a mistake to kind of leave experiencers out there on their own. It's a pretty lonely place, isn't it, Yvonne?
Absolutely. Especially way back 35 years ago when I started, we did not have anything like the internet. I mean, we were barely starting to email. So all the people who were contacting me, it was through phone calls and snail mail. And you can imagine the phone bills. I remember talking to my mentor, Budd Hopkins, on the phone, and all of them, John Mack and David Jacobs. I mean, we weren't emailing each other. So now we have everything, Facebook, which I'm on only for people to be able to contact me. And also LinkedIn. I don't post anything really. I want people to be able to contact me. But my gosh, times have changed. Technology has changed. I never, ever dreamt when I started this that we'd be at, doing Zoom, of course. So I'm able to reach out to people throughout the United States and other countries. I have several serial members, not only serial members, but I have people that are, my clients in other countries who are experiencing similar things like you hear here in the United States. So it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Well, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, but before I say this, I want to preface it by saying this: you don't have to be an experiencer to be a hypnotherapist helping experiencers. You don't have to be.
Right.
But it helps.
Right.
But it helps.
Well,
and I know.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dale.
I was going to say, I know when you first started out, and I don't remember who you said told you this, but at first they really discouraged therapists mentioning that they might be an experiencer. And so that's what happened to you, right?
Well, yeah, and I can understand this. This was in the early mid 90s, and I was working with Budd Hopkins, as I mentioned before. He was my mentor. And he had said to me, when you do interviews, any type of interview, do not tell the public that you've had experiences, because you will lose objectivity and credibility. So I respected that. I respected Budd, and I did not, tell anybody, and I was always asked, and I always felt like, oh my God, I'm not being honest. Now that he's passed now for several years, and I started seeing my clients coming forward, professional people, retired lawyers, and I decided a few years ago, and I think I did it in Roswell, New Mexico. I just decided I'm going to talk about my experiences. I'm going to be honest when I'm asked, whether it's from an audience member or from media. And I'll tell you, I learned so much that through my training, through college, hypnotherapy college, through Budd, and I've had experiences, my boys, especially my young one, Brent, who came out in Roswell, New Mexico, came out of the cosmic closet. It's made me a better therapist. It made me a better parent, understanding other parents that have come to me that are panicked because they're saying, my son or daughter, they're saying strange things. I don't know what to do. But it's because this is a family affair. It's intergenerational. Parents who've put it on the back burner for years, now are confronted with their child saying what they used to say as a child, that they've come to me and say, I need to know what happened to me. I need to know if this is real. So they're confronted with their own experiences. People listening out there, you could put this on the back burner for a while, but it's not going to stay there. There's going to be memories, bits and pieces percolating up to the surface. And eventually, that's why people come to me, because they feel like they're haunted by this. They need to know. They finally need to know. Most people that come to me, maybe 95% of people, never, ever been hypnotized for anything. And they're afraid of it. But I always explain, the process of hypnosis. It's very safe and so forth. But they are willing to go through the sessions, the hypnosis, because they finally want to know. And many of them tell me, I hope you tell me I'm crazy, so I can be hospitalized, so I can be medicated, and this will be over. But
if it's real, that's another story. Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Aliens. Now, you started off originally not covering the subject. This was not your therapy. You dealt with like PTSD and stuff like that. Is that correct?
When I decided to go to hypnotherapy college, and it was after my mom was very into the paranormal. She was very psychic, but she grew up Catholic, so she was afraid of her psychic, abilities. But we went to, at the time, Whole Life Expo in Pasadena, California, near where I lived. And I saw Budd Hopkins for the first time. She knew who he was. I didn't. And when I sat there through his hour lecture and watched his slide presentation, I couldn't believe what I was hearing and seeing. And so we went up to him afterwards. He was very gracious. He had a line of people asking him questions, and I don't remember what I asked him, but that piqued my interest, as well as at the same time, my uncle, who was only 10 years older than me, so we grew up like he was my big brother. He was dying of cancer at 40 years old. And I was with him at the hospital and, every day. And I thought, gosh, after I went to hypnotherapy college and learned what I did, and I thought, I regretted the fact that I was not a hypnotherapist at the time my uncle was dying, because I feel like I could have helped him cross over. But that mainly, I was going to work with cancer patients when I became certified. a certified hypnotherapist, and working in the clinic at the time, I was seeing cancer patients, and I thought, okay, when I open my practice, that's what I'm going to do. And at the time, I was attending conferences, UFO conferences, and I thought, it'd be interesting to see if, I get one or two abduction cases, possibly. And as I began to know people in the field, and they knew that I was a hypnotherapist, I started receiving referrals. And and then it was like 90% of my practice, suffering from allergies. 90% of my practice then became UFO abduction cases. And I did work with cancer patients, but later on, it was, abductions became my specialty. And people always ask me, how did you get into this? And in the beginning, I didn't know how to answer it, because I thought, if I answer it the way I feel how it happened, it sounds really woo-woo. They're going to think, oh, God, she's crazy. But now I'm convinced that I was guided to Budd Hopkins. I was guided to go to hypnotherapy college, and I was guided to do this work. And
Can I stop you for a minute? Because I think a lot of people are
always stop.
Yeah. A lot of people think that, when they think about pastors, they think, well, that was a calling. Like God called them to do that.
Right.
And I hear a lot of pastors say that. But,
Yeah.
And this goes with what you're saying. That's the only reason I'm interjecting here is
That's okay.
I honestly feel this is my second calling. I honestly believe that I'm here for a reason, and all the things are falling together. I've met so many interesting people that there's no way I would have met them without doing this. But the fact that I've had some of the guests that I've had, and it's like it's like with Jason and Deborah and all the others, most of them anyway, I end up becoming friends with, and not just acquaintances, but friends.
Yeah.
And so that's the cool experience. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to tie in that parallel. So I absolutely believe that you were called to do what you're doing.
Yeah. And in the beginning, in the 90s, I just didn't know how to answer that. But now, as you get older, as I'm older, you don't give a damn what people think and people say. This is what I do. This is my career. This is my life's work. And so I'm saying now that I was guided to do this. And people are being brought together, abductees, experiencers. I use the words interchangeably because all these years, over 3 decades, I have heard, as I've had people in hypnosis doing their regressions, that the alien beings have told them. And I didn't know, I didn't think about this when I started, of course. But all these years later, they've been told, when the time comes, you will know what to do. So I know that those of us who have been touched by this, who've had experiences all their lives, are being trained for something. And then lately we were talking about disclosure. It's coming. We're in it now. But it's not going to come from our government. It's not going to come from mainstream media, because I've been told by them that they want to approach and contact people like us. They are tired of the government lying. They are tired of the media twisting everything and making jokes of it. And I have been receiving messages from them for the last 2 years. Now, I never would have said this in the 90s. I didn't get messages in the 90s, but all my experience, what I've been hearing through regressions, people that still don't know each other are saying the same thing. When I wrote my book Chosen, and now it's in the 3rd edition, the second half, I started talking about what I coined the urgency. Because for several years now, I've been hearing from people coming into my office at the time. I wasn't doing Zoom sessions at that time, but they were telling me, I need to know what I'm supposed to do. I know I'm supposed to do something, but I don't know what it is. They're become unhappy with their careers. I mean, people that made six figures and more were telling me that the money doesn't mean anything anymore, that they feel they're supposed to do something to help the earth. I mean, I'm hearing this over and over, and people still haven't met these people that, I've been working with. And now, as we're in 2026, it's all making sense to me. Things are happening between now and 2027. We're gonna see some changes, and if anyone gets messages, please share them with me. You can always email me, because people are. I mean, when I first came out in Contact in the Desert 2 years ago, and I said, you know what, I need to step out of my comfort zone. They want me to share the messages they've given me. And so I started sharing them. And right before Contact in the Desert, about a 3-month period, there were many synchronicities with serial members almost saying the same thing. And I presented all that because they were all being contacted, giving messages. So it's important now to listen. They do want to contact us, but they say we do need to raise our vibration more. If they told me, if they present themselves the way they are and the way we are right now, he said people would go crazy. They'd be so frightened, because that's how humans react. So they're wanting people like us, to receive these messages and spread the word. So that's what I'm going to be doing again this year at Contact in the Desert, because I have more to share.
Do you have the dates for Contact in the Desert? And then I want to follow up on this isn't even one of the questions I had written down. I want to follow up on the messages from a different vantage point. But so when are the dates for Contact in the Desert? Palm Springs, California, is that what it is?
It's Indian Wells, California. It's the first weekend of June, but it may start like the end of May, Thursday, Friday, and then it goes into the weekend till Monday. And it's up now. The speakers are there. And if anybody has the opportunity to go, I mean, it's a great conference. A lot of people attend. They have me so busy. I'll be doing lectures and panels and 2 workshops. In one of my workshops, I'm going to be actually regressing one of my serial members, and this will be a real regression. So something, something may not come out, something will come out, I don't know yet, but I want people to see the process so it's not so foreign to them, so it's not so scary to them. I've been doing this there for the last couple of years, and it has been well attended. So I just want to put that out to everybody.
Okay. Well, about the messages, what I want to get, I was talking to Deborah Cobble the other day, Jordan Cobble, and she mentioned that they like to leave breadcrumbs. And that's where I think, if there are other experiencers like me, that's where the frustration is. Yeah. Is there are things happening and they're not clearly spelled out. They're giving you a little bit here, a little bit there. And it's like, is that a vibration level thing, or is that just a timing thing? Because I know there's got to be a lot of people a lot of experiencers out there who are frustrated with me. I mean, I'll share the one event that I didn't feel threatened by it. I talked to you about it, but the one that absolutely blew me away, and I know there was a message in it, but I don't know for sure what the message was. But as I told you, I woke up 2:00 in the morning, you have to use the bathroom, and my gun was sitting right next to my hand. And to put that in perspective, I was about 6 inches from my head. It wasn't pointing towards me, but I would never consciously do that. I don't sleepwalk. And somehow it got from my nightstand up onto my mattress. And I don't have an explanation for it. And I really believe it has something to do with NHI, with aliens, whatever. But that's just an example of they did it for a reason. there was a purpose behind it. But so much of it is like that, where you can see it happening, but you're coming up with answers, but you don't know, or possible answers, but you don't know if you're correct or not. So how do we get to the point, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, but how do we get to the point that they speak to us a little bit clearer than what they do, like for me right now?
Gosh, I don't know. 2 years ago, when these messages start coming through to me, it was unexpected. It's never happened to me in all my 3 decades of work.
So this is new in the last 2 years. What you're talking about is new in the last 2 years.
Last 2 years, and it was actually during a regression session from a client that I work with, who's in Germany. We were doing her regression. She was going along, describing everything, and then all of a sudden, she stops and says, "There's a being here who wants to talk to you." I didn't know what to make of it, so I just said, "Okay." They said, "We need permission to talk to you. They want my permission." So I said, "Okay, of course." And then that's when I started receiving the initial message. And I shared it with my audience. Well, first of all, they asked me to share. They said, "Please, when you're speaking, share our message." But because there were other experiences around several serial members at the same time, right before contact in the desert, I decided, yes, I'm going to share this. I don't know if I would have shared it if it was just me, because I'm still a little skeptical of it. I don't know, is this real? But because I think that's why the synchronicities happened with other serial members, because they wanted to show me they're getting messages too, and I need to share it. And that's why I did. And I shared messages last year, and I'm doing it again this year, because it's important. I mean, when I shared my messages, there were people in the audience that really resonated with it, because they were receiving messages very similar, and they came up to me afterwards. So I know this is real, and I know I'm on the right track.
Wow. These beings that you're getting the messages, do you have an image of which type there are? I mean, there are 3 main types that people talk about: the Greys, the Nordics, and the Reptilians. May come up in a question a little bit later, but so what kind of beings do you think, or were they something, or were they other?
These beings, the first ones were the Greys. He described himself more skeletal, but basically a gray, taller one, which I have seen and come across in the regressions. The last communication I had, which really surprised me, was from the praying mantis. The way my client, and they come through my client, like, because they need a medium, they told me. And she was just as surprised as I was. But I asked she just started describing. He was very tall. She didn't call him because she wasn't aware, but she didn't call him the praying mantis. She just said he looks very insect-like a big insect, like a big bug. And I knew it was the praying mantis coming through. It surprised me, because in all the hours of regression that I've done, praying mantis, they're usually in charge of the operation, whatever they're doing. They usually stand back in the room, and they're telepathically giving instruction. So there's not a lot of communication from them, but the fact that this one came through and wanted to talk to me, give me a message, I was so surprised, but I was pleased at the same time. I don't remember exactly what he said because I've got to look back at my transcript. Um, but it was surprising to me because it was the praying mantis.
I had to let me get this switched out. The one experience I remember you talking about when we were in Pasadena, when I was in Pasadena, that's where you live, but you talked about being in a white room. Now, was that prior to you starting hypnotherapy, or did that happen while you were doing hypnotherapy?
Oh, are you talking about when I had my flashback?
Yeah.
Oh, I will never forget it. And when I tell my clients, pay attention to flashbacks because you might get them when you're least expecting, like I did. I was still married. This was in the mid 90s. We had a 2-story home. My boys were both in elementary school. And I was I was upstairs scrubbing the bathroom floor. And all of a sudden, it was the main bathroom, so it was pretty big. And I look up, on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor. I look up, and all of a sudden, I'm in this white room, round white room, with several tables. There were several tables, people on them. There was a female being right here. I couldn't see her, but I felt her, and I knew it was female. She was very tall. She had a white gown on, and she just kind of went like this over the room, and like I got the message. You're going to be helping a lot of people. Now, during this time, I was starting hypnotherapy college, and so I was not certified yet, but I was starting to do this. As I mentioned before, I was guided to do this.
That fits.
So, and that was it. I mean, then I was back in my bathroom. And who wants to scrub a floor after having that experience, right? So it was, and so I know when I tell my clients, you may not even be thinking about this subject and you'll have something pops up. So just pay attention to it. That was something, and I don't think that's ever happened again. Not that it, not that blatant and clear, but the white being has feel like she's been with me. And I know that many other people, experiencers, have described a white female being in their experiences. So, yeah, it was something that I'll never forget. And I shared it, I think, for the first time at Contact in the Desert a few years ago, and I was on a panel. So, so I think it's important for people to hear when these flashbacks come up because they're important.
Okay. Well, the one thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure you have, but you're more the expert on it. I know what I see. There's a lot of fear out there right now when people are talking about aliens. Some of them have had traumatic experiences, and I want to make sure that they understand that I am not making light of what they've gone through, because you feel what you feel, you experience what you experience. But my question to you is, and this is the thing that's kind of where I'm kind of in the minority, at least with some of the people that I talk to, is, I see a lot of this fear based on how you perceive what's happening to you. And the reason I say that is I had my dental hygienist and a friend went out to Eastern Oregon for the weekend, kind of a girls' weekend away. And while they're out there, they see this big old green orb in the sky. And my hygienist friend, she's excited. She loves seeing this. Her friend doesn't want to even acknowledge it. She is traumatized by this object in the sky. And the thing about it is the same object. It's just two different perspectives of the same event. How often do you see that in your hypnotherapy when you?
Oh, it's very common where two people, I'll use an example, I have a case of two good friends went on a road trip together. It's been a while, so I don't remember where, but there was a long road trip. It could have been New Mexico, but they saw an object. Something happened because they lost time. And then when they returned home, the one friend didn't want to talk about it. Just didn't want to talk about it. And when that happens, people will express themselves like in anger. And I found that's fear. And so here's these good friends, and that wasn't the only case. I have many of them not talking to each other. And when the one tried to call the other one later on down the line, because it doesn't occur to them about the missing time yet. That sometimes develops later. Like they realize, wait a minute, we were really late, that we shouldn't have been that late. But that friend didn't want to talk at all, which is unfortunate because it's two witnesses, they were together. But I've had so many cases like that. And one of them was in my Coronado book about the mass abduction. There was Gary and Steve who roomed together during the conference. They were taken in the night, and all this happened, the procedures and all. Gary came back with a triangle on his penis, and I've had others. He did not want to talk about it. He just didn't want. He saw what was on his penis the next morning. He called Steve in the bathroom, like, I want you to see this. I need a witness. But throughout the rest of the conference, it was like, because I feel like when they talk about it, it makes it real. But then when he saw that mark on him, that's what I think really scared him. When they came to, after we were all home from the conference, when they came to the next serial meeting, they sat on opposite sides of the room.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
I mean, that's the first time I think I probably actually saw it, actually witnessed that. But I've had many, many cases of that. And I have one currently. The friend that didn't want to talk about it is kind of talking about it a little bit. They may come around, they may not. This happens with family members when they're together and something happens. So, it's fear. It's out of their comfort zone. It's like, what is that? What happened? And especially, can you imagine missing 1 to 2, maybe more hours of your time, and you don't know what happened? That's very disturbing when people come to me for regression. When something like that happened, sometimes it's 30, 40 years ago, believe it or not, right, that they finally need to confront it because it shouldn't have taken that long. Their family members were upset because this was many times before cell phones. They couldn't get a hold of them. What happened? It's
Well, you mentioned your book Coronado, so I want to get back and make sure everybody knows these are the two books that you put out, Chosen and Coronado. I've got them both, and I'm telling you what, these are books that I've read already, and I'm reading them again. I would put them right up there with Budd Hopkins books, and I'll just mention those real quick too: Missing Time and Intruders. The Copley Woods affair. So I just would highly recommend to anyone who's wanting to know more about experiencers or is an experiencer. These are things that when you read them, it's like life becomes normal for you. And, because once you become an experiencer, I mean, it's like everything you thought was true is proven untrue. It's like this, all of a sudden, it's like ontological shock, and you're living in a reality that you were told doesn't even exist.
right.
And so I highly recommend those. Now, what I was leading to is the idea that I think most people, would you agree with this, Yvonne? Most experiencers, when they have that initial experience, it does involve some trauma
Oh,
emotionally and stuff, right? Psychologically.
absolutely. Absolutely. This experience starts in very early childhood. Will follow the person throughout their entire lives. Also follows family members, so it's a family affair. It runs intergenerational. And of course, we didn't go to school and study alien abduction, and there weren't any books back then. And so something comes into this child's room, and it could be 5 years old, it could be younger, they could be 8 years old, but it's early childhood. And so children will relate to this, whatever it is, with something they know. A cartoon character, a ghost. One specific case was the little boy described it as Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk was in his room, but when he described Captain Kirk, it wasn't what we know as Captain Kirk. But that's they never say there was an alien in my room. So of course they're going to be traumatized, and throughout their life they're going to be traumatized because they still don't know what it is. They know they were taken out of their room. They know that they came back sometimes with marks or scars on their body, or they've had bloody nose, or which is very common in early childhood. And it isn't until of course, now we've got the internet, and people will you have to be careful with the internet now, because not everything is true on the internet. Sometimes I feel that having the internet has really made our research more and more difficult. With
Because of all the fake stuff out there.
oh God, yeah, it's just be very, very careful if you're looking into this, and don't believe everything that's out there. But there's, of course, now there's the books, there's the documentaries. I mean, we did a lot of them. Ciro and I, back in the 90s, as I mentioned, the shows that we did, I think we were on doing interviews, television interviews every week. It, Now it's mostly ghost shows. You rarely see anything about abduction, contact, things like that. But
So what do you think that is?
now,
The shift from what they used to do to now, it's like they've moved on to something else.
I think it's because the people in the television world, producers, directors, it's almost like they don't want to touch this subject. I've done so many sizzle reels for possible shows that were supposed to happen that just got shelved. As soon as you mention something like UFOs or UAPs, and especially abduction, oh, forget that. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So I'm hoping that we're going to turn that around now, because they're going to be showing themselves more, as they told me. Do you remember that it was in December of 2024, November, December, when all that drone sightings happened everywhere,
Yeah.
especially in New Jersey, but other places too. And that was one of the messages they told me, that they were going to start showing themselves more so people could understand that this is real. Now, I had my messages probably earlier that year. It was way before November. And so when that happened, I thought, oh, great. I said, do it more. We need to see it more. Because there were obviously some of the drones weren't drones. I mean, they hovered up there. They're big. And they told me that they were going to be doing that again, but not so much that way. Not so much like we expect. It's not going to be like big. It's not going to be like Independence Day. You see this huge mothership. But I think more and more people are starting to receive messages. I like to hear from those people.
Okay, that's pretty good. I have a question of a friend of mine named Testy. He's an experiencer as well. He says, has Yvonne noticed any differences in people's description of NHI or their objectives since she began her career, or have the stories pretty much remained the same? or have you seen an evolution in it at all?
The descriptions of the beings are the ones that I come across. Ones they come across are still very typical. The very small grays who usually take the person out of their normal environment. The taller grays that are once they get in the craft. The human-looking ones that they're probably hybrids. The praying mantis. Rarely have I come across the reptilians. I know they're there, but they aren't ones contacting and performing these examinations and so forth. They have a different agenda, I suppose. So that's all pretty much the same. And as far as we don't, I mean, I don't have the answers to what their agenda is. They haven't told me. But it's been pretty much the same as when I started my regression sessions. I feel, and I still feel, that the hybrid program has been very central to what they're doing. I have talked to people over the years that they feel they have come across a hybrid here on Earth. They, with the hybrids, if we're walking down the street, probably won't even notice them. They're probably at conferences and we don't notice them. But it's when somebody engages with them in conversation or whatever, they say there's something very different about them, different about their eyes, like they study you as if they're looking right through you or reading your mind. This is something different about them. So I
wanted to say something about that because I had that conversation with somebody last night about how sometimes I've been out there, I don't go out at night that much anymore, but sometimes when I go out at night or right close to it, I don't know, sometimes you just look at people and they look a little off, they just look a little off. The other thing is, it seems like, while there are daytime encounters, it seems like there are a lot more nighttime encounters. Like they are far more comfortable with darkness than they are with light. Have you noticed any of that?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, and it makes sense, but
well, the grays with the big eyes, you would think about the amount of light that would go through those big eyes.
People don't want to come across them, while they're trying to go grocery shopping. But
I was talking about hybrid specific, that maybe that's what we're looking at, and they just look a little bit off.
They're a little bit, yeah. And I mean, they're probably even more perfected now. But I do feel, why wouldn't they be walking among us now? This has been happening for eons, and almost everybody that I've worked with in regression they've come across those procedures of taking sperm, taking ova, having the women, they remove something from the women and their tiny little fetuses, and over and over, time and time again, men and women are shown these odd-looking babies, and then they're taken up periodically to interact with their children, because the beings don't have that capability of that bonding that we do. And sometimes it's really heartbreaking because they know at some point that's going to be the last time they're able to see their child or children. We have that bonding, that love for our families, for our children, but they don't. And so it's real sad that, I've had people cry. They know, I know this is the last time I'm going to see him, or her. So, those are really,
I don't think people really, until you embrace the idea that the hybrids are real, I don't think that they understand the amount of pain, for someone like Debbie, and Emily and Andrew, and then the other ones that, that were half hers. And to be able to get to see them, but not to be able to live with them, which kind of, I wanted to ask this question, see if you've heard it or not. Something came to me yesterday, and it was after listening to Budd Hopkins' Missing Time book, and I've listened to it a couple times. But it seems to me that, and this is also based on Yvonne and Walt and Travis Walton and stuff like this, but it seems like at least some of them, they can't exist. They cannot live on this planet. That the environment is not right for them. And like I said, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it God or whatever. But if we were created, if that's the case, could that be a safeguard so that one species doesn't dominate and especially us being an undeveloped country, a world, should I say, we're pretty vulnerable actually, compared to the technology that's out there. And so, and I'm not pointing towards bad aliens. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that there not probably, there are some out there that aren't so nice. And
Yeah.
so, but have you heard, and so maybe that's kind of a safety mechanism to make sure that they don't just come in and take over our planet, because our planet wouldn't do any good to them for them because they can't live here anyway. But are you
Well,
hearing much about the fact that some species can't live here? And I say that because Debbie was told that she couldn't stay in the craft very long because it would be harmful to her.
sure.
When you see the story of Travis Walton, he had trouble breathing in their environment. And then on top of it, you had the Nordics with helmets on.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
assuming that's how they got their oxygen. Well, why would you have a helmet otherwise? And so, have you heard much through or therapy? Have you heard much where people talk about them communicating that they can't live here? Is that why the hybrid process is being developed to
Well,
give them the ability to do that?
yeah, I mean, back when I started my practice in the early 90s, the I was thinking back at this one woman I had very first time that when I regressed somebody, she was describing having a baby taken from her, and she knew it looked different. She had 3 Earth children, but she knew this one looked different. But she still wanted to take it home with her, and they told her she couldn't. So as she was holding it, they came and took it from her and said, he can't survive down there on Earth. And oh my God, she was so brokenhearted and upset. She was crying, and I had to block myself from that emotion so that I wouldn't break down, and then I'm not gonna be good, helping her. Not gonna be good for her. But that was the first time that I heard that these children were not able to live down here. But that's changed because now people are interacting with hybrids down here. And when, recently in the last several years, I mean, when people describe, say, the human looking ones, they never describe them having a helmet. And so with their technology, why wouldn't they be able to develop where the hybrids and whoever can come down here and live among us? I mean, the Greys aren't going to live among us because they're, the way they look, and maybe they still can't be here for a long period of time, but the hybrids certainly can. And the human-looking ones probably can too, because I have not had any descriptions of them. They're all wearing a very tight-fitting, usually blue uniform. They look human. Could be blonde hair, dark hair, but human features. And so they're probably among us. I'm sure they are, because I think people have felt, like you say, there's something different about them when you engage with them.
Since we're here, because one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is I wanted to try to, help people understand what experiencers are going through. And so for those that are not experiencers, they're here to kind of learn and get as much information as they can. when an experiencer comes out, what is it that they need most?
Would it?
When they come out and tell that, hey, I've had this experience, I've had this encounter, because you know
Uh,
how hard it is for an
no.
experiencer to do that the first time.
They need people to believe them, especially their loved ones, um, their best friends. I mean, they need support, of course, but they do not need the laugh factor and the ridicule. And that's why people are afraid to come forward and say, this has happened to me. But then I tell people, your family members who really love you and your best friends, say from elementary school, they know you. They know you're not crazy and prone to make things up. They'll believe you. But of course, unfortunately, there's been a lot of instances where even the family members aren't believing them. But even though this does affect some of the family members, and they're probably not coming forward, not coming, out of the closet. Um, so, it's very difficult. That's why 34 years ago, I founded Close Encounter Resource Organization, CERO, because I realized at the time people were leaving my office and not being able to talk to even their spouse or family members. I mean, they were just isolated. And so we started off with 6 people, in my living room. And I just felt, because they were calling me all the time and I couldn't possibly be on the phone for 24 hours a day. I had a marriage, I had 2 children, and it does affect the relationship. So that's how we started, and started in my home. I was holding meetings in my home every month, and now we have since 2020, because of COVID, I host Zoom support group meetings for people outside of California and other countries. We have many other CERO members in other countries. And then I host the in-person meetings every month. We have a location. We don't divulge where it is. CERO is private. It's by invitation only. And it's kept private to help the members feel safe about sharing their experiences. They'll bring, say, a family member, they'll bring their spouse, and so they know they could meet us. We're not sitting there with tinfoil on our heads and, wearing robes. I mean, we're just normal people. Exactly.
You're very warm and welcoming. I was very, very impressed. Unfortunately, because I live in Oregon and you guys are in California,
Yeah.
I'm not able to make the in-person meetings. I made 2, but I really was impressed by the members there. Very warm and loving. And it's just, I can just understand the pull of having a community to go to, of people that know what you're going through. That's why I was trying to hit on your stuff earlier. You being an experiencer, like I said, you don't have to be an experiencer to be a hypnotherapist working with experiencers, but it helps. It helps because I know that you understand on a level that I don't think non-experiencers can, because you have to, some of the stuff that's happened, and I'm sure you hear this a lot. If it hadn't happened to me, I probably wouldn't believe it. I mean, how many times have you heard that statement?
Oh yeah, many times. And then people will tell me, I know Mary, or I know Tom. I know that. Why would he be making something up? And that's how they realize, wait a minute, something's happening. And then lately, when people have seen the recent documentary about disclosure age, or it's the
Age
one
of disclosure.
okay, people have said, wow, look at the people that they've interviewed, and 3 of the military people are all CERO members. So I was really proud of that.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
In more military, they're going to be coming forward. More people are going to be coming forward very soon, and they have been. And so when you look at these military people, coming forward, you feel like, well, they have a lot to lose. And people with, say doctors and lawyers and people with careers and they have families. But people have told me over the years that they're tired. They're tired of living a secret life. They're tired of not being able to talk about it. They tell me, and as they get older too, like as they get older, you don't give a damn. You just, you're going to say what you're going to say.
Got to lose now.
It's wonderful to get older and feel that way.
Sense, yeah. You can be real. You can be, who you are.
I don't care what anybody thinks. That's what I experienced, and I know what I saw, and so forth. They just, they say, this is what I experienced, and I want to talk about it. I want to tell people about it, and especially if there's other family members, and their own children, like I experienced. So, we're getting there. I mean, more people, the masses of people coming forward, more people coming forward. That's what's driving disclosure. It's not the government, It's not some guru that you're going to look to that, secrets. Be careful with people like that. So yeah, it's the people, and that's why the beings told me, we're coming to people like you, like have had these experiences, because they want the truth to come out.
Right. I want to hit on, we've been talking about it, but we haven't really talked about it, and that is hypnotherapy. And so what is hypnotherapy? Is that where you give somebody control over yourself? Am I out secretly robbing banks and bringing you tons of money? Is that what's going on?
No, it's a very relaxing experience. I'm talking to your subconscious right now, which is 12% of our total mind power. In hypnosis, we set aside the conscious. We set aside in between the conscious and subconscious. It's the critical area of mind, and that part of us is like, and we all go through it. Oh, I'm making this up. This sounds really stupid. She's going to think I'm crazy. We want to set that aside and get into the subconscious, which is much stronger, 80% of our total mind power. We have a lot of information that's stored in there like a computer that we probably don't even remember. And so the subconscious job is to protect all of us. Whatever trauma we go through, it protects us. It may block off all of the experience or some of it. But like I mentioned before earlier, that if the entire experience is blocked out, it's not going to be blocked off forever, because the subconscious will begin to percolate up with, bits and pieces of memory. And that's when the person begins to think, I wonder if something happened to me. They know they saw this strange thing in the sky, or they know they lost 2 hours, and they'll read a book. Maybe they see a documentary now, something that somebody posted on the internet about their own experience, and they think, oh my God, that sounds like what I went through, that sort of thing. So we get into that subconscious mind, and everybody's different. So the first session is the most difficult, because as I mentioned, most people that come to me have never been hypnotized. So I have to dispel all the myths. I'm not going to control your mind. You still have that choice of, if I ask you, do you want to continue or do you want to come out? Because sometimes I'll come across something that they feel like, I don't know if I want to go forward. You're starting to get nervous. Most of them will say, no, I want to keep going. I waited too long. You have that ability. So then we start going through, I can break through those blocks, and those blocks are the subconscious protecting you, or it could be something that the alien beings did to block your memory. But they don't do a real good job, because I could get through that. But now I know they want people to be aware. They want people to be enlightened about this, what's been happening to them. So it's a state of relaxation. I set aside 2 hours for each session, because I want to take notes in the beginning. Where do you want to explore? Then we go through the regression, which I never know how long that's going to be. And then when I bring the person out, we go through the debriefing. There's a lot of questions and a lot of, y'all tell me, did I make that up? It was because things that come out sound crazy.
Mhm.
But I'll give them a little bit of confirmation of, I'm going to give you some confirmation right now. When you said such and such, I've heard that hundreds of times. And that really, it blows their mind really, because they'll go, it sounded so strange to them. And what I do tell them, which is really important, is that do not hold back information. I want you to just verbalize everything. Because you may think something sounds weird or crazy, but I may have heard it hundreds of times. So for their benefit, I tell them, do not hold back.
One of my misconceptions about hypnosis is, and I'm guessing it's different for every person. So maybe for some people, this is the way it is. But excuse me, I thought it would be like you go back in time and it's like watching a movie. And it has not been that. It's like fragments of a movie, and things change and shift, and it's coming from a different place. It's coming from your subconscious. So how common is it for people where it's like a movie, or is it for nobody like a movie?
I wish we could get the information A through Z. That would make my job so much easier, and so much easier for them. But like you said, there may be fragments here, fragments there, and then there's a block because they know something's past this point, but they don't know if they want to, actually experience it, because they will relive the experience.
I felt the pain in the last session, which was an eye opener for me, because I thought it was a different encounter. And it's like with Whitley, all of a sudden I must have shifted because the navel pain and stuff like that, predated that experience. And so there's no way it came from that experience, because, for decades I'd had issues with that. And so that's the other thing, is you don't know. You can start off going one direction, and without warning, you can be in a different experience. That happened to Whitley in communion. He went back to like age 12. And the only reason they knew it is because his voice changed.
And I tell people before we go into hypnosis that if your subconscious spontaneously goes to another time in your life, go with that. Because for some reason it wants you to remember it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
It happens often enough that I tell people that all the time.
Yeah.
So that's what happened to you, and it happens to many people.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, Coachella at age 6 is my thing. I mean, I don't know what it is, but that's where I keep going back to. And the grace, you talk about flashbacks. I had that one of the tall gray, and then the 2 small beings, which I'm assuming are small grays. And then after the last session, I was on a examination table, and then a flashback came back, and it was all lit up. It was which that's the other problem, is we try to suppress it. And I wonder sometimes if some of that blackness that we see isn't part of the suppression part. What do you think on that?
Well, if it's blackness, like a black curtain, or sometimes a face, an alien face will be right here. Yeah. And that's another block. I have people that get headaches, like they can't continue because their head hurts so much. That's another block. It comes in, differently for everybody. But that's when I ask, do you want to continue or do you want to stop? And you're able to stop, and that's your choice. But a lot of people want to continue because they waited so long. And I use different techniques, of course, so they can verbalize what's happening without feeling the pain or discomfort.
So that's one of my questions. I want to jump in right here, because that was one of my questions. When somebody's going through a traumatic event, and maybe it's just because I'm sure there's cases where you've had people that didn't even realize they were abducted, but they had some signs that might point to it, but they had no definitive evidence. And then all of a sudden I see that with Budd Hopkins in some of his cases. All of a sudden they're like, oh my goodness, and then this stuff's coming at them. So what do you do to calm the people down so that they don't get overwhelmed by that? And have
Just
you ever had one? Let me ask one last thing. Have you ever had one where you had to shut it down because they were too overwhelmed?
I mean, yeah, but I'll ask, do you want to stop? Do you want to stop now? Or there have been instances where they've been so upset that I go, okay, we're going to stop now. And when I should take a deep breath, I come over, I tell them, whenever I'm going to touch them, I tell them, I'm going to touch your forehead. I want you to just relax. And then I give them a suggestion that they're going to remember everything that happened and remember more consciously. I always tell people they're going to remember more consciously. You don't want it buried anymore. It's been buried for probably 2 or more decades. So, but it happens. People will relive it. But a skilled hypnotherapist will know what to do. I've been training hypnotherapists to do this work since 2021.
I brought that up on purpose, Yvonne, because I think that there are people out there who are considering it, who are considering having hypnosis, but they've got all of the wrong stories about hypnosis, or they've seen, I don't know if it's called Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, all these bad things happen. And so,
yes, that movie. My clients were, not a lot of them, a handful, panicked. Is that going to happen to me? Am I going to have my back broken? I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
No, this is a movie. No, but I can understand them, being concerned about that because those scenes were terrible, really terrible.
What I'm trying to get to is that it's safe, and the person who's going through the experience, has the ability, even within themselves, to stop it at any time. You're just giving them permission, by asking them to make sure, do you want to go on or do you want to stop? I remember you've said that to me. And, the other thing is, that stinking conscious mind keeps wanting to interpret everything you see.
Of course.
And you have to put that off and just relay the information, otherwise, you're going to miss an awful lot.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's talk. We're almost done here. I know you're getting tired. Let's talk a little bit about Budd Hopkins and Dr. John Mack and their influence on you. And as you look at their styles, I'm realizing, having listened to several of their books, they're really not as far apart as some people make them to be. But which one influenced you more? Which side do you lean more towards? Do you more like John Mack and the spiritual aspect? Or are you more on the Budd Hopkins, the emotional toll that it takes on people? Which side do you go on?
I mean, because I worked with Budd, he invited me to sit in on a couple of his sessions, which I was very grateful for, because you don't learn that in college.
Right.
And then just, meeting some of his clients over the years. Deb was one of them. And so I took more of what Budd was teaching than John Mack, but John Mack was later when I realized when the fear dissipates, and it'll dissipate with the sessions, with the support group meetings, with it'll dissipate. That's when people realize and are able to open their eyes, quote unquote, that there's more to this, that there are messages, that some of them are given tours of the ship once that fear dissipates. And they're amazed by that. They're shown other rooms. They're shown the flight deck. But I still don't. And I know there might be therapists out there. I still don't, not in that space where this is all positive. This is all spiritual. They're here to help us. I'm not into that. because I know they're not supposed to interfere with us. I mean, we are stupid humans playing with all these weapons, and they're concerned about that with the nuclear weapons. They will intervene if we start playing with the weapons and it starts, interfering with the rest of the universe. But they've given us messages along the lines. I mean, back in the 60s when they turned off all those ICBMs in all those military bases. I mean, okay, I lost my train of thought, Dale. What were you asking?
Oh, we were
That's my
talking about
senior moment.
Hopkins and Mack, and it's okay.
Yeah.
That was really good. You answered the question because Budd Hopkins, I think what I'm hearing from you is you sound very much influenced by Budd. He didn't see him as our savior, but he didn't see him like the devil. And it seems like those are the two choices that most people want to present. They're all.
He was not willing to say. He was very against them. He was very angry that they're doing what they're doing. But so he was not willing to say, when the fear dissipates, you'll be able to understand them or whatever. But
go that far.
He was still in that school of this shouldn't be happening, and he was very against it. And I think David Jacobs was the same. Was the same way. Of fearing them, and which I don't, I'm always asked, are they good? Are they evil? And that's our humanness that we ask that. And I say they're neither, as far as I'm concerned. They have an agenda. They have an agenda, and they've been working on their agenda. They've told people, we're not going to hurt you. We're going to take you back when we're done. But not a lot of communication. But and I think, that, and because they don't have that capability of the bonding and they realize, oh my God, this person, we're really traumatizing this person. They don't think in those terms, but there is a being that does come in there's a being that follows each experiencer abductee throughout their lives. So sometimes that being will come into the room when the person's really being, traumatized. And I've had people, all of a sudden they stop like crying or screaming, and I recognize that one. It's like recognizing a family member. Sometimes they cry, and then this being helps them calm down. I'm getting chill bumps just talking about this because I mean, just I experienced that with people. It's a love that they have for these beings because they've been with them since early childhood. So, I don't disagree with, I mean, Budd was, he hated them. He thought that shouldn't be done. And it's true. I mean, it's like they were being kidnapped. They were taken out of their normal environment. But then again, with John, and I know John and Budd, they locked horns a lot over this. But like I said, I don't, it's not all roses and rainbows with them either.
I thought in his books he was very balanced because I've heard maybe I'm just missing some stuff, but he just pretty much, he didn't think that they were evil or bad, just that they were doing things. And I don't know if the word inconsiderate is strong enough for it, but that they were taking liberties that he didn't think they had a right, that was creating trauma on human beings. And he even said it, I think in one part, they couldn't understand why people were getting so upset, and they didn't seem to, he said that they understood our biology, but not our psychology.
Oh, right.
And so, I had a certain view, like David Jacobs, it's completely one-sided on his views. And for me, I think it's probably a little of both. And I kind of have landed myself, and I might change before it's all over with, somewhere in the middle, realizing that it is a traumatic event to be taken. And, so when the Greys take you, that's an ordeal.
It's an ordeal, and then, who do you talk to? Just things like that. It's gotten a little bit easier, but still, there's people out there that go, they're afraid to come forward. So, but I assure them when they come to me, it's client therapist privilege. I will not,
Right.
this is very private unless, they give me permission to use their name and whatever. I would never do that. So, my first objective is to clear them and help them through the PTSD. And then the research is second,
That's where I was
so,
leading. That's where I was
okay.
leading. And we're getting ready to close it out. But I wanted to lead to the fact that, because I think one thing that a lot of experiencers are stuck. They're stuck in that fear
Yeah.
stage. And this is why I
Yeah.
think, hypnotherapy, getting with a therapist, because it sure seems like to me, and I'm just an observer on this, as far as what I'm seeing in other people, you're much more in depth with this, but it sure seems to me like those that get in a group like Zero, those who go to therapists, those who process the anger and the fear, then all of a sudden they look at their experience differently. Do you see
Oh,
that
yeah.
in
Oh, yeah.
your
Yeah.
counseling?
When of course, many of them are traumatized, angry, and everyone. I tell everybody in Zero in our meetings, no one is right, no one is wrong. Everybody's on a different level with this. It's just how we process grief. There's no book telling you this is right, this is wrong, this is what you should, feel. It's if everyone is very different, and we have to respect each other, and that's why I have a set of rules for Zeros. Like, everybody has a chance to speak and share, and they'll get through it, and they have gotten through it with help, with the support of other people that have had this experience. They don't feel so alone, and that's huge.
Okay, well, why don't you, the last question I'll ask you is there one case that you've worked with that still kind of sticks with you? It's like the one that you can't seem to forget and it's on your mind a lot. Is there one case like that?
Well, I think the one case that definitely put it on the map for me was the double abduction of two brothers, Jesse and John Long, and I wrote it up in the Chosen. Um, there's a lot to this case, so it's a lot to describe, but Jesse came to me. He lived in Southern California, and he started coming to me for sessions. He said he and his brother were 4 and 5 years old, and they saw something at the top of the hill in their backyard. So we went through several sessions, and he remembered he and his brother were taken in the ship. But John, he had no interest, and he lived at the time in Tennessee, no interest in UFOs. He just wanted to build his house. He had a young family, but he was building a roundhouse. And he also built a 6-foot praying mantis.
The roundhouse was kind of like a flying saucer, wasn't it?
He was giving messages, but at the time he didn't realize it. At the time I didn't realize it. So finally, after many years, Jesse said, okay, John said he wants to go through hypnosis. And Jesse, being as honorable as he is, never told his brother. And I always say, don't tell the other witness anything until we're done with them. Finally, John said, okay, yes, I'll go ahead, see if anything is, to this. And so we flew, Jesse and I flew from California to Tennessee. I did a couple sessions with John. And what came out was the same thing. Their conscious memory was the same. And then their getting into the ship was the same. But his John session started very slow. The first session is always the most difficult. And I thought, we're not going to get anything. Oh my God, he's blocked. And, I was so worried. This was like mid-90s. And all of a sudden, he started describing his friend that took him into the ship was the tall praying mantis, but he called it this. He was 5 years old. I regressed him back. He said, it looks like a big bug. And obviously, and he drew a picture, and obviously it was the praying mantis. And so when we were done with the sessions, that's when I told him, oh my God, you subconsciously wanted to build this roundhouse, and subconsciously he built this, his friend, the praying mantis, to scale. There was a group of praying mantis underneath his trailer where he lived while he was building his house. One was dead, so he measured it. He built it to scale. And so that when I was flying home with Jesse, I looked out the window. I said, wouldn't it be funny if a UFO came flying by? But that really put it on the map for me. I knew this is real. And the show Encounters found out about the case, flew me back to Tennessee on camera with John, and he gave permission. They did a wonderful show on the brothers. It might be on YouTube. This is back in the 90s. So we had
Encounters.
Yeah, it was the Encounter show, and this was the John and Jesse Long double abduction. It might be there. I should look it up. I forget about YouTube. Yeah, I mean, if I start with YouTube, oh my God, I'm so busy. There's just too much out there. But people will get on YouTube, and that's where they see my lectures, and that's how they contact me many times. But that case, it still amazes me. I just couldn't believe it was coming out when I had John in hypnosis.
Wow.
So
it's amazing. I want to put these up one more time, Chosen and Coronado, and I want to make sure that everybody knows where can they purchase those books. We're talking about Amazon or
they're both on Amazon. I've got another book coming out, the Zero anniversary book. Will be at my table at Contact in the Desert, and then we have a documentary, Zero documentary, coming out hopefully before the end of the year. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm going to pull you off and then go ahead and do the closing. But I just want to say this, Yvonne, and this is me, and I know I'm biased, but I want you to know I think you've had such a big impact on the community that someday when you're gone, people will be talking about you the same way we talk about Budd Hopkins and Dr. John Mack. And so I wanted to thank you for all that you have done to help out experiencers.
Thank you, Dale. I really appreciate that. And thank you for everyone who was watching.
Right.
Have a blessed day.
Right. Thank you. Well, I just want to thank everyone who watched this podcast. This is one that I'm just going to look back at and go, you know what? I had a legend on the show. I had someone, I'm sure anybody that had Budd Hopkins on a podcast or not a podcast, but on a show back in his day, I'm sure they treasured that. And I know I treasured this one as well. Yvonne is just, she's done it so long. She's such a humble person, and she's so easy to talk to. So I sure hope you enjoyed the podcast. Now, let me encourage you, if you haven't done it already, to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share the video. This one got kind of started behind because of the StreamYard not working correctly the first time. So go ahead and share this video. Let your friends and everybody know about it, because I think it was a great, great podcast. Anyway, thank you for being here. We'll see you next time.
We are not alone. They are among us. As the skies light up, they believe we are blissfully unaware. But this activity by non-human extraterrestrial technology is capturing the attention